The holographic display flickered in the center of the observation deck as Ambassador Chen Wei stood motionless. Her hands were clasped behind her back, and her dark eyes reflected the cold blue light of the transmission. Around her, the crew of the diplomatic vessel Endeavour watched in stunned silence. The vote had concluded. 347 against, 12 in favor. The Galactic Senate had spoken, and humanity had lost. The message was simple. Earth would receive no aid. The Vorkith Dominion had claimed the Sol System as their hunting ground, and the Senate had decided that humanity was not worth saving. The cost of intervention, they said, was too high. The political complications, they argued, were too severe. Better to let one young species die than to risk a war with the Vorkith. Chen Wei turned away from the display. Her face showed nothing, but inside her chest, something burned. She had spent 15 years building relationships with alien senators. She had learned their languages, studied their customs, and begged for their support. And in the end, they had thrown humanity away like garbage. Captain Marcus Cole stood at the viewport, watching the stars. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his face from battles that most people had forgotten. He had served Earth for 40 years, and he had seen many things. But he had never seen anything like this. The complete abandonment of an entire species by those who called themselves civilized. The communication officer approached them with hesitation in his steps. His name was Lieutenant Park, and he was young. Too young to understand what this vote meant for every human being alive. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "the Senate is requesting that we leave the neutral zone within 6 standard hours. They say our presence is no longer welcome." Chen Wei laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Of course," she said. "They vote to let us die, and then they ask us to leave politely. How very diplomatic of them." Captain Cole finally spoke. His voice was rough like gravel. "What are our orders, Ambassador?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked to the main console and entered her personal authorization code. The screen changed, showing a secure channel that very few people knew existed. "Our orders," she said slowly, "have already been sent. Before I came here, before I begged those creatures for help, I knew what the answer would be. I prepared for this." The message that appeared on screen was short. It contained only coordinates and a single phrase. "Operation Prometheus is active." Captain Cole read it twice. Then he smiled for the first time in weeks. "So we're not going to die quietly." "No," Chen Wei replied. "We are not." Far away from the diplomatic vessel, in the darkness between stars, something massive moved. The Terran Imperial fleet had been hiding for 3 months. 47 battleships, 230 cruisers, over 1,000 smaller vessels. They had been assembled in secret, using resources that officially did not exist. The Senate had never known about them. The Vorkith had never suspected. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance. She was a woman who had been born in war and raised in conflict. Her mother had died fighting raiders when Sarah was 6 years old. Her father had been killed in the first Vorkith attack when she was 16. She had lost friends, lovers, and soldiers under her command, but she had never lost hope. The transmission from Ambassador Chen arrived at exactly the time it was supposed to. Admiral Okonkwo read it and nodded once. Then she activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "Attention all ships," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "This is Admiral Okonkwo. The Senate has voted against humanity. They have decided that we do not deserve to exist. They have chosen to stand aside while the Vorkith burn our worlds and slaughter our people." She paused to let her words sink in. Across the fleet, men and women listened. Some were afraid. Some were angry. All of them were human. "But we did not ask the Senate for permission to live," she continued. "We did not beg for their approval to survive. And we will not accept their judgment on our right to exist. The Imperial fleet was built for one purpose: to protect humanity at any cost. Today, we fulfill that purpose. She looked at her command crew. They were ready. They had been ready for months. All ships, engage engines. Set course for the Vorkith staging area in the Kepler sector. We had a message to deliver. And we will deliver it with fire. The fleet moved as one. Engines blazed to life, and the darkness of space was broken by the light of humanity's answer to the Senate's betrayal. The Vorkith were a proud species. They had conquered 12 star systems before humanity had even discovered fire. Their warriors were born with natural armor on their skin and claws that could tear through metal. They believed that the strong had the right to take from the weak, and they had never met a species that could challenge them. When their sensors detected the approaching human fleet, they laughed. Their commander, a massive creature named Thaxvar, dismissed the threat with contempt. Humans, he believed, were soft. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They were prey animals pretending to be predators. He ordered his fleet to intercept. 23 Vorkith warships moved to engage the approaching humans. It would be a quick victory, he thought. A demonstration of Vorkith's superiority before the main invasion of Earth began. He was wrong. The first Terran volleys struck the Vorkith fleet like hammers from an angry god. Plasma cannons tore through shields that had never been tested against human weapons. Kinetic rounds punched holes through hulls that had deflected alien attacks for centuries. In the first 3 minutes of battle, 5 Vorkith ships ceased to exist. Thaxvar watched in disbelief as his flagship shook from impact after impact. Alarms screamed around him, and his crew reported damage that should have been impossible. The humans were not supposed to have weapons like this. The humans were not supposed to fight like this, but they did. Because humanity had learned long ago that survival required strength. And they had built that strength in secret, away from the eyes of the Senate and the attention of their enemies. Admiral Okonkwo commanded her fleet with precision that came from years of training. She directed her ships like a conductor directing an orchestra. Every movement was planned. Every attack was coordinated. The Vorkith had expected prey. They found predators instead. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 19 Vorkith warships had been destroyed. 3 had fled to warn the Dominion. 1 had been captured intact, its crew taken prisoner for interrogation. The Terran fleet had lost 23 vessels. Each loss was felt deeply. But the victory was complete. News of the battle spread quickly. Within hours, every species in the Galactic Senate knew what had happened. The humans, those weak creatures who had come begging for help, had crushed a Vorkith battle group. They had done what no other species had ever accomplished. They had made the Vorkith bleed. The Senate convened an emergency session. Senators who had voted against humanity demanded explanations. How had the humans built such a fleet? Where had they gotten such weapons? Why had no one warned them about this? Ambassador Chen Wei requested permission to address the assembly. This time, the Senate could not refuse. She stood in the center of the great chamber, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of species. Her face was calm. Her voice was clear. 3 days ago, she began, this Senate voted to abandon humanity to extinction. You decided that we were not worth saving. You believed that we would simply accept death because you commanded it. She looked around the room slowly. Many senators could not meet your eyes. You were wrong. Humanity does not accept extinction. We do not go quietly into the darkness because others find us inconvenient. We fight, we build, we survive. And when the universe tries to kill us, we kill it back. There was complete silence in the chamber. The Imperial fleet is currently moving toward the Vorkith homeworld, she continued. We estimate arrival in 6 standard weeks. When we arrive, we will end the Vorkith threat permanently. Not because the Senate asked us to, not because we seek approval, but because they threatened our people, and we do not forgive. One senator, a creature with 6 arms and skin like blue stone, stood up. This is an act of war. The Senate did not authorize military action against the Dominion. Wei smiled. It was not a warm expression. The Senate voted against us. They made their position clear. We no longer recognize Senate authority over human actions. You had your chance to be our allies. You chose to be bystanders. Now you will watch as we handle the problem ourselves. She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, one more thing. Any species that attempts to aid the Vorkith or interfere with our fleet will be considered hostile to humanity. We have enough weapons for everyone. I suggest you choose wisely. She walked out of the chamber. Behind her, chaos erupted. Over the following weeks, the galaxy watched in amazement as the Terran Imperial fleet carved a path through Vorkith space. System by system, world by world, the Dominion fell. The Vorkith fought hard. They were warriors bred for combat, and they did not surrender easily. But humanity had spent centuries fighting each other. They knew war in ways that the Vorkith could not imagine. The final battle took place above the Vorkith homeworld. The Dominion had gathered every ship they had left. It was their last stand, and they fought with desperate courage. It was not enough. Admiral Okonkwo accepted the surrender of the Vorkith's supreme commander 3 days later. The terms were harsh. The Dominion was dissolved. Their military was destroyed. Their worlds were occupied. They would never threaten another species again. When the news reached Earth, celebrations erupted across the planet. People who had expected to die found themselves alive. Families who had prepared for the worst discovered that they had a future. The Senate sent message after message to Earth, offering congratulations and requesting diplomatic discussions. Ambassador Wei replied to each one with the same phrase. Humanity remembers who its friends are, and who its friends are not. New alliances formed. Species who had been silent during the vote now approached humanity with offers of trade and cooperation. They had seen what humans could do when threatened. They wanted to be partners, not enemies. Some said that humanity had been cruel, that the destruction of the Vorkith had been excessive. That peaceful solution should have been attempted. Admiral Okonkwo answered those critics personally. We asked for peace, she said in a recorded statement. We begged for help. The Senate told us to die quietly. We refused. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, then we will be the monsters that protect our children. We will be the beasts that guard our worlds. And we will never again place our survival in the hands of those who do not care whether we live or die. Years later, historians would call this period the Great Awakening. It was the moment when humanity stopped trying to fit into a galaxy that did not want them. It was the moment when they stopped asking for permission to exist. The Senate had voted against them. The Imperial fleet had voted with cannons. And in the end, the cannons had won. Because when words fail, when diplomacy dies, when hope seems lost, humanity does not surrender. They fight, they bleed, they sacrifice, and they win. Because that is what humans do. They survive, at any cost, against any enemy, forever.